we don't have to parent. We get to parent. We don't have to do these things with our kids. We get to do these things. We get to be the ones to clip their toenails.
Yes.
And, wipe their messy faces and do all of the little mundane things that moms do day in and day out. And, it's part of motherhood, and it's a joy. Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am back today with Greta Eskridge. This is part 3 of our conversation. So if you've missed parts 1 and 2, go back and listen to those. You will be so encouraged. We are talking about her new book, 100 Days of Adventure. And we're talking about homeschooling because you know what? This is the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast and we talk about homeschooling. That's what we do. And so I'm loving this conversation. It's so fun. I feel like we should be sitting with a cup of coffee and talking to each other.
For sure.
And it's one of my favorite parts of doing this is that I get to meet so many neat people that the Lord brings into my life and therefore into the lives of our listeners. And I just want to have a big party with all of them. And I want to sit and have coffee with you, Greta. One day
Yes.
we're going to get to do that. It will be so much fun. We had so many similarities as we were talking before we started recording. And one of them is a Hume Lake Christian camps. And we both have a connection there, and it's one of my favorite places on the planet. I love Hume Lake. So for those of you who are in California, or for those who are outside of California and are familiar with Hume Lake, the beauty and awe of the Sequoia National Forest and Hume Lake Christian Camps. It's an amazing place. So anyway, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but
a little, because you can adventure there in God's creation,
so much
right?
Adventure. Yes. There's lots of adventure there. But before we jump back into our conversation, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, CTC Math. If you guys are looking for a great online math curriculum, go to ctcmath.com. Check them out. You can try it for free and see if it's a good fit for your family. And like I mentioned in part 1, they are the sponsor of our new podcast called Homeschool Insights. And that is just a short shot in the arm. It's 10 minutes or less of homeschool encouragement. And so we're taking the best clips from years worth of podcasts and the movie as well. There are parts that are coming that are going to be parts of the movie that you haven't heard because they were part of interviews that didn't make it into the movie, but are really encouraging, just snippets that you need to be encouraged. So visit us at Homeschool Insights. That's a new podcast. You can find it on any podcast app. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, you can find it there as well. We'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. So thank you to CTC Math for sponsoring that podcast as well. Greta, welcome back.
Hi.
To day 3. I want to talk really quickly first. You have a personal motto that I've heard, and I was reading this about you, and you say this. You say, do small things with great love.
Yeah.
Where did that originate? What does that mean? Tell us about that.
The quote is actually from Mother Teresa, and I took it kind of as one of my personal mottos when my kids were little, because I felt like my world with them was small, and there were so many things that felt like I was just doing again and again, and feeding them, cutting fingernails, teaching kids how to get dressed, learning to read, things that felt repetitive and felt small in the scheme of the great big world. But I knew that by doing them again and again, I was making an impact on their lives. And I could choose to do them with an attitude of, being irritated or bored, or just being, having an attitude where I sighed and okay. Or I could do it with love and feel that it was something that was a privilege to be able to do. And so that's where it came from.
I love it. Just like we talked about in the first episode, I think, of, we don't have to homeschool. We get to homeschool.
Yeah.
We don't have to parent. We get to parent. We don't have to do these things with our kids. We get to do these things. We get to be the ones to clip their toenails.
Yes.
And, wipe their messy faces and do all of the little mundane things that moms do day in and day out. And, it's part of motherhood, and it's a joy to get to do those things with them. So It's adventuring with our kids as well. Even the clipping of the nails.
Yes. It is a joy also when they learn to clip their own nails.
Right. It is. Yeah. Well, and that transitions into the joy of our little girls, my little girls coming and say, Mom, will you paint my toenails? Will you paint my fingernails? And fun things like that, that again are just building those relationships and making those connections and building memories with our kids. Cause those are just the fun little, 5 minutes or 10 minutes to paint their nails, and you get to have fun little conversations with them.
Yeah, totally.
Just that little one-on-one time. The best is when they start learning how to paint their nails themselves. And they're so messy and it's all over their fingers. And, and, an hour later it's already chipping off, but it's so fun. I mean, and those are some good fine motor skills that they're learning, right?
Yes.
When they're just learning how to try to hold that nail polish brush steady and get it right on their nail bed instead of all over their fingers.
I haven't quite mastered it myself.
Right? It can be tricky for sure. Mm-hmm. So, okay, I want to go back to the book. Your book is 100 Days of Adventure, Nature Activities, Creative Projects, and Field Trips for Every Season. You break the book up into different seasons. So you've got summer, fall, winter, spring. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about field trips and how field trips play into adventure and building relationships, because we talked a lot in the first episode about nature and what that looks like. Yeah. Let's talk about field trips.
Oh gosh, I think field trips are one of the best ways to help learning come alive for kids. And in fact, one of the things that I thought was so tragic actually when I was a public high school teacher was that my students would maybe get to go on one field trip a year. And in high school, a lot of times they didn't go on any.
Right.
And I just thought, wow, they're missing out. There's so many great things to explore outside of the world, the four walls of our classroom, out in the world. And I just thought, man, when I have kids, I want to do a lot of field trips because it shakes us up, right? And when we're in our normal routine and all we do is inside of that routine, it's easy to kind of be head down and to not look up and be like, wow, this place is incredible. I live in this incredible world with all these things that I can learn from and see God in and grow my mind. So I think field trips are important, and the freedom that we have as homeschoolers to be able to learn outside of the walls of our home, that is a gift that we should take advantage of.
Do you plan out field trips at the beginning of the year and then try to, because I feel like with field trips, that's something that you have to be really intentional about. You can't just be like, well, I'm going to take a bunch of field trips this year and expect them to happen. I mean, you don't have to plan out every single week of the school year. Every seasoned homeschool mom knows that you never plan out every single week of the year because it's going to fall apart at some point, but maybe month to month. Do you do that? Do you actually plan out what you're going to do for field trips with your kids?
Okay, this is really funny because I am a very loosely scheduled homeschooling mom. However, the one thing that I do have scheduled down to the week is field trips.
Okay. I love
so
that.
You can see where my priority is. Yeah. But here's the reason why. We adventure every week with our homeschool group. Okay. So as a group, we are adventuring every single week. Every Tuesday is our adventure day. And we meet together and we plan the whole year. But here's the thing, we hold our plans loosely because plans change. Sometimes it's like, oh, it rained and the trails are closed, so we have to go to a museum. Sometimes it's too hot and we switch the trail we had planned and we go to the beach. Or the museum's closed for some reason and we've got to pivot and do something else. So we have them mapped out because we know certain times we want to go on this hike because we know the tadpoles are going to be turning into frogs. So we need to go in this window. We know when the window is. Yeah. But again, so we have the plan, but the plan is held loosely because, actually it was really rainy early in the year. We need to switch and do the frog hike earlier. Mm-hmm. So yes, we do plan it out. Okay. And we have things that are our favorites, and certain times of year we do favorite activities, but we're very willing to be flexible because we get to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Do your kids enjoy museums?
They do. When they were when they were little and we went to art museums, like a children's museum or a science museum, which has all the hands-on stuff.
Right.
Like every kid loves those, but
Yes.
art museums took time. And I had activities that helped them learn to love them. Even though my kids love art, they didn't necessarily all love the experience of a traditional art museum where they had to be quiet and not run and not touch anything, and it felt stressful. So one of the things that I did to help them learn to love art museums is we would focus only on just looking at a few pieces of art. We wouldn't just go to room after room. We would learn about the pieces of art or the artists that we were going to focus on before we went, so it was familiar.
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh, we know who this guy or this girl is that made this piece of art. Oh, that's the art we saw in the book. Mom, I see it. That's so exciting to see something in a picture and then to see the art in real life, because it's so much better in real life. And it's so exciting. So they're initially drawn to it because it's familiar. They've seen it, but then they're blown away because they're seeing it bigger and in person. So studying beforehand is amazing. And there's a really easy way to do it. You can go to the museum website before you visit, and you can see what will be on display.
Okay.
So if you're going to look, like say you want to see, a Vincent van Gogh. So you look and you see, are any of the Vincent van Gogh paintings going to be on display when we visit? Yes. Which one? And you find out which one, teach your kids about it before you go. And then we also do they can bring sketchbooks and they can draw the things that they see, sit on the floor in front of it and do their own drawing of it. I've also done scavenger hunts. So they have to look for 10 things, like find a piece of art that's really colorful, find a piece of art with a boat in it, find a sculpture of an animal. And so they have a clipboard and they get to walk around and they feel very official. And it makes the whole experience interactive and fun instead of drudgery. And I'm worried the whole time that I'm going to get in trouble, which I think a lot of kids feel when they go to an art museum.
Yes. Cause you've got all the guards standing there.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't get too close. Stand behind the stanchions. And,
and I think as parents, we're like, man, I spent the time and the money to go on this museum. We got to get the most out of it. But then it just becomes so overwhelming and the kids are just going from room to room and all the art just is a blur and you don't appreciate it anymore. Right. So I think we as parents have to be willing to set aside this, I got to get the most out of this day and just be like, hey, we're going to focus on 3 or 5 pieces of art and our kids are still going to like it when we're done.
Have you ever read the books? They're some of my favorites, and we haven't read them for so long because they're more for younger kids, but the Katie books, like Katie and the Sunflowers.
I haven't.
They're so much fun. So it's about this little girl named Katie, and she always goes to the art museums, and usually I think she's always with her grandmother, and her grandmother will fall asleep on the bench or something like that. And then Katie will go and she will somehow enter the picture, but it always has pictures in the book. It's art from famous artists.
That's awesome.
And so she'll enter into, and then it brings that art piece to life in the book.
Yes.
And she interacts with the characters in that art piece. And then there's always, some crazy disaster that happens, she'll flood the museum or something like that because she opened the picture. I mean, they are so cute and so much fun. I'll put links to them in the show notes. So people, I can't remember what the author's name is, but they are fantastic. And they're like picture books.
Yeah.
But they're really fun stories that really help kids to become familiar with all kinds of different artists.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the book, it talks about the artists that they, talk about in the book and what paintings they are. They're some of my favorites. So it's been so long. I haven't even thought about those books for a few years because it's been a long time since I've read them with my girls. But yeah, I'll put those links in the show notes. So anyway, we've got to take a break though. We'll be right back.
What we do at IEW is break through the noise of the grammar and the writing prompts, and we say, this is what you do, step by step. And I've witnessed it over and over again, both watching Andrew teach and hearing from parents, this is the best writing program. We've made it so easy and made it really affordable. So any mom can teach writing to their children using our course, and we guarantee it.
To try 3 weeks of free lessons, visit IEW.com. We are back with Greta. I have so enjoyed talking about just exploring with our kids and all the amazing things that we can learn with them and the relationships that we can build with them. You guys, if you have not seen this book or gotten it, definitely get a hold of it. It's 100 Days of Adventure. Nature activities, creative projects, and field trips for every season. And it is beautifully done. It's beautifully written. It's beautifully illustrated. There's recipes in here. So many fun ideas, because unless you're a person who it just comes really, really naturally for you to be able to come up with all these amazing ideas of things to do with your kids, this is the kind of book that is so helpful for us in our homeschool. I think books like this are as important as math books and science books and history books, because this helps our world come to life, and it helps to build those relationships with our kids. And so instead of you racking your brain or spending hours on Pinterest trying to figure out what am I going to do with my kids, get a book that helps you. And this book will help you. You guys, it's so good. 100 Days of Adventure. And again, like I said, I'll put the link in the show notes. If you guys purchase it through our links, any books or resources that we put links to in our show notes, almost always goes back to helping to support the ministry of Schoolhouse Rocked and keep this podcast going. So the book is excellent. But as we've talked about that, I know there's another whole side to kids exploring. And oftentimes that exploration comes in the digital world. And so we're going to take a little bit of a turn here for these last few minutes. And I know this is something, Greta, that you're really passionate about, is how our world is just increasingly, as parents and as kids, becoming more and more digital. And there's such an impact on our lives of, screen time. And man, I can't stand it. And I talk about it so much is, we go to restaurants or anywhere in public and you see whole families sitting together and they're all on their phones. We recently, my oldest is 16. And so she's, quickly entering into that stage of, obviously noticing boys and stuff. And so she always notices when there is a couple on a date. Like, I mean, she can spot them, as soon as we walk into a restaurant. And oftentimes she'll see both of them sitting on their phones. And she has so many times commented, she's like, if I went on a date and the guy wanted to sit on his phone the whole time, she's like, I would never go out with him again. I mean, if you want to check a quick message, whatever, that's fine. But I mean, they just are consumed with it. So talk about this, because I know this is something that you're really passionate about. What is the impact that you're seeing, and how can we pull away from that and help guide our kids away from screens and the impact of this crazy digital world that we live in?
Well, I think that that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about getting kids out on adventures and having parents connect with their kids through adventure and having kids connect with other kids through adventure, because they're doing it in a way that's face-to-face, that's relational, instead of doing it over a screen. Because what I am seeing, and you see it on every news report, you see it all over the place, that kids are becoming more and more socially unavailable, which is so ironic, because how long have we heard the worry that people have about homeschoolers is that they don't know how to socialize, right? But now kids who are in traditional school are the ones who don't know how to socialize, because they'll literally be sitting at the bus stop not talking or looking at each other because they have their earbuds in and they are on a screen, or they're walking to school and they're not talking. They're looking at a screen, and then they're in school and they're looking on screens, and then they come home and they're on screens. And so I think we have to be so purposeful as parents to give our kids the opportunities to interact in real life ways with one another, with the world, with books, with nature, not through screens. Because they need to learn to talk to each other. They need to know how to cultivate real life relationship, because the other part about being engaged with screens and being online, is that there's a whole world that's out there that is offering them false connection. You know, the dangers of pornography are real, and they are out there enticing our kids, saying, here's relationship, here's intimacy, here's connection, but it's a lie. Right. That's not real life connection. We have to cultivate the real life relationship with our kids so that when the false one is offered to them, they can spot it and reject it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to do. How do you do that intentionally? I mean, other than, I mean, obviously we're trying to get our kids out, and you've got a book that gives us all kinds of ideas of what to do in place of that. But when we've got kids who are completely addicted to their phones all the time, how do we pull them away from that?
Well, I think, I think for parents, the earlier you start not making screens available all the time, the better it is. So as parents of young kids, you need to cultivate in your home, like, screens are not the go-to. They're the occasional. They're sometimes we do this all together. On Friday night, we get to watch a movie together, but that's not where you go to for entertainment or for babysitting. Like, you need to cultivate as much as you can other options. Right. And then when you engage in screens, you use them together. You know, even if your kid, like just today, my daughter wanted some references for art. And so together we sat and looked for things, not like, oh, sure, just go search on Google by yourself and who knows what will come up. So cultivate it as, like, we do this together. We spend time online together, but the majority of time we don't spend online together. And then as your kids get older, you model, like I just did with my daughter, you model using technology in a safe way and in a responsible way. I think we have to really be willing to be different and not like say, oh, when my kid's 10, they get a smartphone, because that's the average age every kid gets a smartphone is 10 years old. Like, instead say, no, we're going to wait. That can happen in the late teen years when you actually really need one, because you have a job and you have to be available via text or something like that, but not just because every 10-year-old gets their own phone.
Yeah. Wow. So many things right now in our world that we're trying to navigate through, and it's hard, but that's where we pray and ask the Lord to give us wisdom, to help us through it, to navigate through these things. Because our parents didn't have to deal with some of the things that we're having to deal with. Right. So it's not like we could go to them and say, hey, Mom, how did you do this when I was teen? Because it didn't exist.
It's nice to have. There definitely is, I think, cultivating a community around you of other parents who share the same ideals. That's one of the best tools, because then your kids are not alone and you're not alone. You're like, hey, this is just how we all do it. And let's all talk to each other in real life and not just, through video games or via texting. That is really helpful.
Yep. Community is so important. So, wow, Greta, this has been so fun this week. I've loved talking with you. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your book, 100 Days of Adventure. If you guys haven't gotten it yet, pick it up. Go to our show notes. You can find the link on there. Thank you for sharing your wisdom this week and for writing this book and giving us all of the examples and fun ideas of how we can build relationships with our kids and cultivate those connections with them. So we are so grateful to have you with us. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great rest of your week. We will put all things Greta Eskridge in the show notes so that you can find her anywhere and everywhere. She is a fantastic writer. She's got lots and lots of blog posts that you can find great encouragement through. So have a great rest of your week. If you've not yet left a review for the podcast, please do that. We would really appreciate it. We'll see you back here on Monday with another fantastic guest. Bye.
So I never planned on homeschooling. And in fact, our oldest daughter, who is now a mother herself, when she was about 3 years old, I put her in preschool because I thought that's what we did. When it came time to put her in kindergarten, my husband and I enrolled her in a Christian school because I went to a Christian school. And I think this is where parents, we typically do with our children what our parents did with us.
Ow, look, Annie, something wrong with you. Less is more. They like little bits. They don't like the big, huge handfuls because their mouths are so little.
We honestly started homeschooling kind of by accident.
I think it's changed pretty significantly. I think we're both far more on board than we were when we first started.
At first, I was completely against homeschooling. I felt like that kids needed to go to school to have proper socialization and proper education, and so I had really bought into that myth.
We got into homeschooling not because we wanted to. We're kind of the weird people. There's a lot of people who got into homeschooling. They always dreamed about it. When they were first pregnant, they were looking forward to homeschooling. Not us.
So I'm a little bit maybe unusual. We moved to really good public schools and then they let me down.
Call them accidental homeschoolers or reluctant homeschoolers. Their stories, like ours, weren't that unusual. So many of the families we met never planned to homeschool.